A few chapters later, Jesus shares another parable, a parable of the 10 talents, where a master gives each servant 1 talent, and if you're familiar with it, he comes back a few weeks later to see what each servant has done with the talent. Those who invest the talent wisely and bring it back more than simply 1 talent are rewarded, while the one servant who does nothing with his talent and just brings that back is chided and rebuked by the master. And so throughout the Bible, financial stewardship is commended by God. Clearly then, building a bigger barn in order to store all of his crops is not the reason why the farmer is called a fool. Being wise with his resources is not what makes him a wasteful life. Rather, the answer and explanation can be found in verse 19. Verse 19 reads, "And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of good things laid up for many years. Take life easy. Eat, drink, and be merry." This, dear brothers and sisters, take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry, is the anthem of a wasted life. For the farmer, his life's goal was to do nothing more than to take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry. For the farmer, he wanted nothing more in life than to be comfortable. He wanted to maximize his comfort and minimize his suffering. Such a goal, such a life according to Christ is foolish. Dear friends, do you see yourself in this farmer? Do you have similar aspirations? If we are honest, I believe many of us would have loved to be in the farmer's shoes. We would love the idea of having so much money that the rest of our lives can be spent on taking it easy, eating at the best restaurants, drinking with friends, and simply relaxing. Watch out. Be on your guard, declares Christ. Such aspirations and dreams are a waste. We must not allow the thinking of this society. We must not allow the thinking of our friends and co-workers. We must not allow the media to indoctrinate us into thinking that the good life consists of these things. The last thing you ever want to hear from God is, "You fool, you have taken this life I have given you and thrown it away." Why is the take it easy, eat, drink, and be merry life a waste? Why is the farmer rebuked for such a goal? I have 3 explanations. First, Psalm 14 verse 1 says this about fools in general. The fool says in his heart, "There is no God." There is no God. The farmer is a fool because he did not consider God. He did not consider God's glory. Neither did he consider God's interests or God's dream for him. He did not live for God. At his core, he lived for comfort and ease. He lived for entertainment and fun. In contrast to the fool, Proverbs chapter 1 verse 7 says this, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom." The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Those who are wise are those who live with the fear of the Lord. They are ever mindful of God's glory. They have this all-pervasive awareness of God's presence at all times. They are ever mindful of God's desires. And so they center their lives on what they believe will bring most glory to God. Second, the farmer is a fool because in verse 20 we see that in the end God requires our soul and not our possessions. When mankind faces judgment, God will not look at the size of our bank accounts. He will not look at our financial portfolio or our estimated net worth. Rather, God will see how rich we are towards Him. He will measure the treasures we have stored up in heaven. And to be rich in this world but bankrupt in heaven is to be a fool. He is a fool who works so hard for things that last at the most 80 to 90 years if you live that long, and yet works so little for that which lasts for an eternity. As Jesus says in Luke chapter 9, what good is it for a man to gain the whole world and yet lose or forfeit his soul? Why work so hard for things that will give you this much amount of enjoyment when you can store up treasures that will last you for eternity? It doesn't make even financial sense. Third, the farmer is a fool because, as Jesus says in verse 15, a man's life does not consist in the abundance of his possessions. Possessions or things do not make life. God did not create us in His own image and breathe life into us so that we can live for things and inanimate objects. Money can't buy happiness, a new home, a new car. The proof in that is how long does it take for a new homeowner to then desire another one? How long does it take for a new car owner to then lust for next year's model? Or a computer owner to wait for the next generation? Or an iPhone owner to now want the newest iPhone? You only need to look at the financial status of those who commit suicide in the world to realize that things and money do not bring happiness. The farmer is a fool because he thought his full barns meant a full life. He is a fool because he assumed his full barns guaranteed happiness and fulfillment. Brothers and sisters, there are few sane people in this world who are comforted by their possessions on their deathbed. There are few people who are about to die who say, "Bring me my choicest possessions, lay them on my pillow next to me so I can hold on to them." Some of you might be thinking now, okay, so that's the wasted life. Tell me, Pastor Jeff, what does the unwasted life look like? Well, if the wasted life is one that chases after things that do not last, then the unwasted life is the one who chases and accrues treasures that will last. If the wasted life is one that desires to store up treasures that will last for 80 to 90 years, then the unwasted one is one that chooses to store up treasures that will never fade. If the wasted life is one who lives his life without any contemplation of God and His desires and glory, then the unwasted life is one that lives at all times with an understanding and conscious apprehension of God's presence in his or her life. Jim Elliot coined it best when he said, "He is no fool who gives what he cannot keep to gain that which he cannot lose." That is the wise person. According to John Piper, the unwasted life is, quote, "a life that puts the infinite value of Christ on display for the world to see." The passion of the unwasted life is to joyfully display the supreme excellence of Christ by the way we live. The unwasted life is a life that spends its time and energy pursuing that which is of infinite worth and value. It is a life that treasures Christ above all things.